Well, hello everyone. Today I am going to replace my intake on my 2002 Ford Explorer. There's a quick look at it. It has a plastic intake and it's been leaking now for a little while. I replaced a gasket on it about a year ago and it was leaking, and when I replaced the gasket, well, it continued to leak on me. So I just figured, I did some research and found out that this plastic intake, especially back here near the firewall, number 8 cylinder, it does crack. And I'll show you when I take it off, and that's my problem. So I had to go and buy a intake. This one has the non-heated PVC, so when you order these intakes, you gotta find out if your PVC is heated or non, meaning this is non-heated and this is just a vacuum. Now I have an 04 Mountaineer out front with the same motor that I'm gonna have to do the same thing to. It has a heated PVC valve, so you have to make sure that the part numbers correspond to the right VIN numbers on the car and all that. But hopefully you can continue to hear me with this guy weed eating. Every time I start recording, it's either the birds or the weed eaters or the cars. Anyway, over here is my intake. There it is, brand new. Got it on eBay for $160. They give you everything. They give you an updated version. This is the aluminum water port. A lot of these get bad and they crack. And there's the bottom side. And this is the new gasket, updated system gaskets they put on them. The factory ones has a gasket that kind of lays in here and you can pull it off. Well, these have little rubber O-rings that seal much better, and they say that it works much better and there's no problems with it leaking. Apparently it's a factory update. So there's a look at it. What I've done so far is I've drained the antifreeze. There's a plug under here, and you can kind of see that right there. You open that up, catch some of your antifreeze, just bring it down, taking the hose off. I'm going to take the shroud off here in a few minutes. One thing you do want to make sure you don't do, and I found this out the hard way, there's bolts that hold this top shroud cover on. Do not put a long bolt down here, because if you do, you're going to knock it right into the radiator. You're going to knock a hole in your radiator and you're going to have to replace it. I found this out about a week ago. This is another radiator from a parts store. I was putting the bolt back in it. Didn't look like it was it looked like the same length bolt, but when I got in there so far, it got kind of hard to tighten up. And when I was tightening it up, I heard a little pop and it went through the plastic on the radiator. So don't do that. If you do, you're going to be have a big problem. You're going to pull the radiator out and all that good stuff. But luckily, to do this intake, I do not have to pull the radiator out. Having said that, I'm going to go ahead and pull off some hoses and stuff. It's pretty straightforward. I usually take the this thing here, I forget what it's called. Forgive me, but once I take the bolts out, I usually just take a bungee cord and kind of pull it up out of the way, and I'll show you here in a little bit. But you do need some tools, sockets, and all that good stuff. You do have to pull the alternator off. Not a big deal. Pull the bracket off. And you take your fan clutch off. I made a special tool. You put it on there, and you turn it this way to get the pulley off on the clutch fan. So, but I'll go ahead and take that off here in a second and show you. But I'm going to go ahead and start on this and get it apart real quick and show you, and give you an update, let you know how it's going here shortly. Alright, out comes the top part of the shroud, and here's what I mean. This side of the shroud has a bolt. It's about that long. I'll find it there. There it is. It's you can see it's kind of long. There it is. Now the one on the passenger side, which goes down here on the passenger side, top part of this shroud, see, it's a little shorter. I shortened it up because I wasn't going to make the same mistake again, so you might want to double check the bolt you take out of there, or maybe mark it with spray paint, because if you don't, you're going to have a very bad day knocking a hole in that radiator. I'm spending a little time on this just to show you don't have to so you don't have to go through what I went through. But here comes the shroud. It's coming out. There, it's out. I'll lay it over here to the side. I'm not going to record everything I do. I'm just going to do the big stuff. Once you take this off, take the alternator off, the hard part's done, and all you got to do is unhook some wires and take out the intake bolts, and you're good to go. So I'll go ahead, I'll take this off here and I'll show you the tool that I made. Give me a second here, I'll go in there and get it real quick. Alright, there is my tool that I made it a few years ago. You can rent these tools for this at the parts store as advanced You can rinse these, so it's not a big deal. And what you do, you put it on there, and these go, like I said, this way to loosen it. So what I'll do is put this on here, and I'll put a little pry bar behind the water pump pulley there. I know I'll probably get some heat for that, but you're not supposed to do that. But I know I've done this before, and I know how much pressure to put on it. And you kind of bump it until it breaks loose. Now with the tools that you rent at the parts store, they do make something that goes around these 4 bolts on the bottom. These little bolts there you see, there's a rod or something they make that goes around that, and it kind of holds that pulley in place. Then you take the other tool and you put on the nut. That's how it actually works, but I don't have the second tool. This is, like I said, my homemade job, but it works pretty good. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off, and I'll show you here in a little bit. Once I get just about all this stuff off here, we'll pull this intake off and give you an update on how much time is taken and how much more I need to do to actually pull it apart. Like I said, it shouldn't take too much. I'm just going to take my time today and make sure I don't lose anything or break anything. Nice warm day for a change. Nice to be out here in the sunshine. First April warm day, quite some time. 75 degrees right now. So, all right, I'll be back. All right, that's off. Now, you may not have to, if you've been working on cars quite some time, you may not have to take that off. You might be able to take this this alternator off by taking something and putting it on the tensioner here and popping the belt off and just doing it that way. But for me, it's a lot easier just to take the shroud off because you got a little more room, and when you got to put it back together, if this belt slips off, you got to make sure it goes around these pulleys just right, and it may be tough to get your hands down in here with this shroud in the way. Alright, I'm going to continue here, and I'll give you an update here in a little bit on how much more I've got to do, and give you a quick sneak peek how my new intake looks setting down inside this engine. Alright, I got that off. What I use is a half-inch breaker. What you can do is stick it right here on this pulley. There's a little place right there, and you can turn it and pop that belt off. Now what I've done, before I pop the belt off, I made a little diagram. See? You might want to do the same thing, because for some reason on this Explorer I don't see a belt diagram on the hood or anywhere. So there you go. Alright, off comes the bracket. I'm going to throw it off to the side here. I just randomly will grab the video camera and tape something here in case you have to do something like change an alternator. 2 bolts down here. You just loosen those, you don't have to take them out. And you got the 4 up here, and those are, I do believe, 10mm sockets. And they're loose. You just pick up on the alternator like that. Now here it comes. I'm going to have to replace this soon. It's getting some miles on it. I noticed the other day it was kind of making a little noise, but it's pretty quiet. And there's the intake. You can see it. It's got the plastic covering around it. It's like an insulation from the heat from the engine that protects it. I'm going to have to reuse this one because I do not have any other one to use, and they don't give you one, and I don't know if you could even buy this. So when you pull this intake out of here, it comes out with it, and you can replace this with the new intake, and it'll still serve the same purpose. It'll keep it basically from melting. But there's that is out. Now all I gotta do is unhook these wires and take some bolts out, and this should come right out. So I'll be back here in a few minutes and give you an update. Oh, also, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. You do have to take the throttle body off. It is held on by 5 or 6 little bolts, and they are, I believe, 8mm. One there, one down there, and there's a couple back here. And you got to take off the EGR valve, and this is a 13 bolt there and one there. Once you take that off, you can just pull it up out of the way a little bit. You may have to pull on it a little hard, but it should move enough to get this intake off. I'll show you here in a little bit how I did mine. At least mine was a little loose. Some of them may be, if it's really tight and bolted really good to the manifold, it may not move as good, but you should be able to move it enough to get this intake out. Once I take this off, then I'm going to start unhooking these fuel injector wires and get this intake out of here. So I'll be back here shortly, and I'll give you an update and let you know how it's going and let you know what it looks like. At least show you what it looks like with the new intake sitting in there. Hey guys, hey, one other thing. If you ever are listening to your engine run, you hear this noise, it sounds like a timing chain rattling something, check your PVC valve, because if you hear this, yeah, you could have problems. What happened is my PVC is okay. It should be making that noise, but right here there's a kink. This is pretty flimsy. Right off the throttle body. What happens is, what I noticed, when it got hot, this tube kind of closed off. It would shut off the air, and this PVC would start clanking and making all kind of noise. It would just be making rattling noise. So I took my finger, pulled it out here while it was running, put my finger under there, and it stopped doing it. So I'm going to have to replace this here. So you might want to check yours, make sure it's not closing up there. This hose is just real flimsy. But I did want to show you that before I forgot. Alright, throttle body is off, and here's my EGR, and you can see what I mean. It does move a little bit, so I'll take a bungee cord and wrap around it and hook it up here. And one other quick tip, you really don't have to unhook your cables and all that. I just got the throttle body laying up here. I even have my cables attached to it in the spring, so you don't have to worry about that. Put a little rag up here, or cloth, to keep it from sliding off, and keep your bolts, separated. And there's the EGR, and there's the little gasket. Don't forget that guy. You don't want to break that or tear it. There's the 2 bolts for the EGR. And all I have to do now is unhook some wires and take the bolts off, and pretty good shape. If your EGR is a little loose like mine, you can probably retighten it over here on the manifold side. There is a place you can get into. Once you take this plastic cowling off, you can... you may, in extreme cases, you may have to take the wheel off. Really, it's probably better if you take the wheel off, jack it up, take this plastic off. You can get right into that nut. They're probably going to be rusted and all that, but you can get a wrench in there, and you can actually, if I can zoom in, you can probably see it there. Right there, it is. You can tighten it back up a little bit, put some oil on, let it soak for a while. That'll take care, but take care of the sloppiness in your EGR. I know this is just a nightmare. I don't know why they did this. They could have designed this some different way, but what do I know? Alright, that's off. I'm going to go ahead and pull these bolts off, and go ahead and get these wires off, and we're good to go, and take this one out, and I'll show you the crack on this real quick and what I tried to do to get me by, but in the long run it was just as easy for me to buy a new intake. Alright, let me go ahead and finish this up. This has been about a 45-minute job so far, so if you've worked on cars, it's not a big deal. Alright, enough rambling here. I'll be back here shortly, and I'll show you what I've done so far, and keep it rolling. The last really hard thing, or the tedious thing, is sometimes is getting this fuel line off. There it is. You have to use one of these little black separators. I got them at the Advanced Auto, I think, for like $6. You get like a set. I actually use a wire to keep mine together so I don't lose any of them, but you get different colors. But I use the black one. It's pretty big. You just slide it on the back right there, and you get that under the spring, and there's a little spring back there, and once you put that on there, push real hard, it pops it right off. So that's off, and just about ready to take this intake off. Alright, I'll be right back. Hey, I did lie. I almost forgot to tell you this. This might be a good idea. I had to take all your coils out, so you might want to do that. I got all mine out, and they're all laying over here off the side. There's 8 of them, and the bolts are kind of small. I believe these bolts are, I'm using a little 7mm socket. They might be 6. This is just a little loose, so you might have to use that. I'm using my Porter cable, little cordless 18-volt torque wrench. You get adapter. You can get different adapters. This is a 3/8, or you can get a 1/4-inch adapters for these tools. Makes it really nice, and you can tighten bolts up pretty good. You can't really torque. You have to do that by hand, but this little fellow makes the job pretty fast. Now all I got to do is unhook my intake bolts. These are, let me see. I'll tell you real quick. I believe these are going to be 10. Yes, 10mm. And there's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of them. And that intake will come right out. Then really the only thing I need to do is take these 4 bolts off, put my fuel injectors on the new intake, and put the new intake on. But I'll clean this up real quick before I do all that. So I'll be right back. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'll go ahead and pop these bolts off real quick. Use my cordless drill. These makes it really fast. If you're going to work on cars, I'd advise for you to get one of these, because this cuts the time down dramatically, probably down to 10% of your time. Of course, the two back ones I already took out with my hand because I can't get this thing in there, and all the bolts are out. All you do is lift it out of there, and I'll set the camera up here a little differently. Your thermostat bolts, they're a lot longer than your intake bolts, so just so you know. 8, 9, one more right here, 10. And I can show you, I can move this now, see? Hey, well, that too. But see, it's ready to come out. So I'll stop the camera here and set this up a little differently. Well, I might be able to leave it just like this. Let me just stop the camera for a second here so I don't waste the battery. Alright, here we go. Now the trick is, I usually grab on the fuel rails, pick up just a little bit. And you might have to put your hand here to hold this plastic piece that's on the bottom of it, so it doesn't come apart, and when you pick up on it, it should slide right out. Like I said, it's a little tricky. And I got my hand, like I said, on the bottom of this cover, this insulation piece there, if you can see it, holding it. And there it's out, and I'll take the camera here. Alright. Hopefully I don't bore you with this. And there's the engine, and there's the old gasket. Let me take this off real quick. I wanted to show you what I did, and I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but my leak was right here on the back. Of course, it didn't hold. I made a gasket back there, metal plate, where it was leaking, but oh well, I tried. But this gasket, it's pretty well shot too. You can see it's got some, kind of hard to see. It had a couple cut places in, but anyway, here's the thing on this intake. I just took off. All right, here's the back side of the driver's side. Now, if I spin it over and you look very closely, you see a crack right there? That's where it usually leaks. Right there where that crack is. So the new intake, what they've done, they've filled this in. You can see I can stick my finger in there. This one over here, the new one, they filled that in. They put a plug there. See? See, there's no water that goes in there now. So that'll eliminate my leak. Now here's what I was saying about this plastic. Let me just put this camera down real quick. This is a insulation piece they put around it. It's in pretty bad shape, but I can reuse it. But if you have one of those, you might want to just take it easy so you don't bust it. Like I said, the only thing I've got to do now is take my one hand here is to take my fuel injectors off and put them in there, and that's pretty easy. Just 4 bolts. It's like a little deep well socket. And put the new fuel injectors in the new intake and stick it back in there. But before you do all that, before you put it all back in, make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and clean all this up. I'll try to move the camera a little slower. It's just pretty dirty. And make sure nothing falls down inside your intake or the fuel injector ports. It looks pretty clean. I can probably clean it up without worrying about that. And if you're going to be outside, make sure it's a nice dry day. I storm chase, so I pretty much know weather. So if you're going to do this outside, you might want to check the weather. It's taken me about an hour to pull this apart. Not bad. About an hour to put it back together. But I'm going to clean some stuff up and change those injectors around. And I'll show you here in a few minutes, once I get ready to put it back together, what it looks like. But like I said, this is a 4.6 2002. Noisy cars in the neighborhood. Okay. Alright, I don't know if you can hear me over the neighbor's lawnmower, but this is actually an 8 millimeter deep well socket. It's what you got to have to get on these little tiny bolts that's holding the fuel rails down. Just so you know, if you go looking all day for a socket and you realize you don't have one, this socket actually, you use it on the fuel rail and on the valve cover. Believe it or not, valve covers are the same size bolt. So I had to go buy one when I was putting this together, And you can see it goes on there like that. Those are only two size bolts that I needed to socket for. But I'm going to go ahead and change this. I thought I'd show you that because I can use this for my own reference when I'm watching videos years down the road when I need to work on one of these and what size socket I needed. But yep, that is an 8. Alright, the injectors are all back in. I got the 4 bolts. So you notice this side of the injectors are nice and straight. But what's really weird, what Ford did on this side, it's nice and straight till it gets back here, then it bends in. And this back injector, really hard to, it's not in real straight. It was like that on the original intake, so I don't know if that's a design flaw or whatever, but it's just enough room to get that screw back down in there when I put it back in. This is where the cable bolts on too, but I just wanted to show you that in case you're like wondering maybe you did something wrong, but no. Let me set it up here and you can see what I'm talking about. See how this is kind of crooked on the driver's side, then the passenger side is straight and everything lines up nice, but over here it gets kind of weird. But this is the way it is, the way the factory I guess made it. But I just wanted to show you that. Alright, I'll finish up here and get ready to drop it in there, and you can watch me drop it in. And on the back side there's a nipple here. I guess this intake will fit some Crown Vics or something, or some other engines. They give you a plug, a little rubber plug, but they don't give you a clamp, but I put a clamp on it just to make sure it's on there. But there it is. I'm going to stick it back in there and you can watch me here in a second. Get ready to put it back in, but the way I discovered it is apparently they did away with this this heat shield. I tried to stick it on this, it won't fit, but if you look closely, see the difference? This is a lot wider. This is what mine came off of. And it kind of goes on there like, kind of like this. Wraps around there, sits on there nice and flush, but it will not go on this one here. Apparently you don't have to use it anymore, and I guess I'll go ahead and stick it in there. There's a lot more. This is not as big as the old one, and the air is able to go around here and keep this, I guess, cool. So, but this was pretty big, and it was pretty close to the block, so they probably had to put some insulation around it to keep it from getting too hot. And you can even see right here, it looks like it melted a little bit, the original one. But you can see there's a big difference. The new one, the old one. So I guess we'll go ahead and stick that on there, and let me set the camera up here so you can watch. And before I drop this in, you can see I cleaned this real good, the intake. Took some light sandpaper to it. Nice and smooth, so I'm ready to drop it in there. So let me set the camera over here and go grab the intake, set it in there. And here it comes. And what's nice about this intake, you don't have to worry about the other gaskets getting them on there and tearing them and all that. And you don't have to worry about stuff moving around like you did on the other one. But let's see right there. And there it's in. And like I said, this bottom piece here, it's a lot smaller, so it's not close to the engine like the factory one was. They had to wrap it up with insulation because I guess it got pretty hot. But I guess on these updated ones, you don't have to worry about that. But that's in. I'm going to go ahead and bolt this up. I'm not going to show you everything I do. You should be able to put it back together. And like I said, I got all my water hoses, my water lines, this nipple in the right place. Got the plug in. I just put the thermostat in and hold it up. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll check back here in a little bit as I get it together, and we'll start it up and listen to it run. Alright, it's all back together just in time because it's getting dark. The only thing I had to do, they give you a plate up here for the alternator, the top of it, and they give you these little spacers. You have to put little spacers up here behind the back of this plate. I don't know if you can see my finger. I'll show you the plate over here, my old one. This is the bracket for the top of the alternator. And it kind of sits like this. Hope you can see it. This one, the intake they give you, well, the bracket will hit the top of the intake. It's a little higher. So they give you some little thin spacers that you put underneath of the bracket on the back side. And that clears it from the top of the intake. Probably can't see, it's too dark. Just so you know, and they give you some bigger spacers here, but didn't really need those. So they're probably for a different engine, and I have this and some bolts and screws left over. Don't really need those. Not sure what they're for. Probably for a different vehicle, because I know this intake will fit different types of vehicles. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some antifreeze in it, and we'll start her up and see how she sounds. Well, she's running there. Water level's good. Alright, I'm going to shut it off so you can hear me. Alright, well, I've been driving it a couple of days now. Everything seems to be pretty good. By now, I would have had to refill this reservoir. It would have been completely empty. It's staying right where it should. It's still completely full. The intake's on. I get everything hooked up, and I had a bracket left over. I had a little plastic plate and some screws left over out of that kit. Other than that, everything seems to be pretty good. And my PO 430 check engine light, which just says it's the oxygen sensor, it has not come back on. And I know that seems to be a mystery to a lot of these Ford Explorers with a 4.6. They have a PO 430 check engine light that comes on, and nobody can figure it out. I think what happens is that moisture gets sucked into the intake, and it kind of messes up the oxygen sensor, and it throws the check engine light on. So I haven't had that problem. It seems to be okay. So if you're going to replace the intake and you've got the problems I've had, it may also take care of your PO 430 code. But I've been driving a couple days and it seems to be okay. So thanks for watching, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up here and clean it up and take the rear end out of it and do some put some new clutches in the rear end, sell it and get rid of it, and start driving my 04 Mountaineer out front. But thanks for watching, everybody, and if you're going to do this job, good luck, and thanks for watching.